You know that feeling when you're scrolling through endless binocular listings, trying to picture yourself out in the field, and you keep wondering if you're about to drop a few $100s on something that will sit in a case forever? I get it, you want that extra confidence that the gear you pick actually solves the problem you have, whether that's spotting a distant ridge line on a hunting trip, tracking a flock of geese over a lake, or just getting a clearer view of a storm from the porch. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I started looking into premium optics for long-range observation, the Leica 8x56 Geovid-R kept popping up because it blends a classic roof prism design with a built-in laser rangefinder. That combination is rare in the binocular world, and it's exactly the kind of two-for-one feature set that can either be a game-changer or a compromise, depending on how you actually use it. So I dug into the specs, skimmed a handful of forum threads, and tried to imagine realistic scenarios where those numbers would matter. First off, the 56mm objective lenses give the binoculars a very bright image, especially when the sun is low or the light is thin. In practice, that means you'll be able to see a clear, light-intense picture at the edge of a forest clearing without the view turning grayish. For birders who chase waterfowl at dawn, that extra brightness can be the difference between spotting a bird on the wing or missing it entirely. The big exit pupil that comes from the 56mm lenses also makes it easier for people with slightly smaller pupils, often older users, to make full use of the light, so you won't feel like you need to keep the lenses glued to your eyes all day. The 8 magnification is a sweet spot for steady viewing. Anything higher, say 10 or 12, starts to amplify handshake unless you have a tripod or very steady arms. With 8, the image stays relatively crisp even if you're standing on a windy ridge. I tried visualizing a hunting scenario where you're crouched in a blind, breathing slowly, and you need to keep the target in view for a few seconds. The steadiness at 8 means you can lock onto a deer moving through a meadow and still get a usable picture without the image jittering into nonsense. That steadiness also helps when you're using the built-in laser rangefinder. If the view wobbles, the range reading can jump around, but the 8 keeps that wobble minimal. Now, the rangefinder itself is the headline feature that sets this pair apart from a typical hand binocular. It measures distance in meters, which is the standard for most European hunting regulations, and is handy for anyone who needs precise distance data without pulling out a separate device. Imagine you're on a boat and you see a buoy 250 meters away. You can pull the rangefinder button, get an instant readout, and adjust your approach accordingly. That saves the extra step of pulling out a handheld laser, and because the rangefinder is integrated, the sight picture stays aligned with what you're looking at. No need to calibrate two separate devices. That said, there are trade-offs. The built-in rangefinder adds a layer of complexity to the binocular's operation. You have to get used to the button placement, the timing of the pulse, and the fact that the rangefinder works best on solid, reflective surfaces. If you're trying to get a distance on a low-contrast bird perched on a branch, the laser might struggle to lock on, and you could end up with an inaccurate reading or no reading at all. In those moments, you'll revert to estimating distance the old-fashioned way, which can be a bit frustrating if you expected the laser to work on everything. Another practical consideration is the weight. The 56mm lenses and the rangefinder electronics make these binoculars a bit heavier than a standard 842 pair. They're still portable enough to carry on a long hike, but you'll feel the difference after a few hours of holding them steady. I'd recommend using a neck strap with a padded support or a small harness if you plan to be on your feet all day. For casual birdwatchers who just pop out to the backyard, the weight might feel unnecessary, especially if they don't need the range-finding capability at all. Waterproofing is a claim that's often tossed around, but with Leica's reputation, you can trust that these binoculars will survive a sudden downpour or the occasional splash from a lake. In real terms, that means you can keep them in a rain jacket pocket, pull them out for a quick scan, and not worry about fogging up the interior prisms. For anyone who spends time in wet environments, coastal anglers, marsh hunters, or even hikers in spring, the waterproof seal adds peace of mind that many lower-priced options simply don't offer. So, who should seriously consider buying the Leica 8x56 Geovid-R? If you're an avid hunter who needs accurate distance measurements on the fly, or a birding enthusiast who frequently works in low-light conditions and values a bright, steady image, this